Ladies and gentlemen, may I welcome you to India U.S. 2015 Partnering for Peace and Prosperity session. To begin the session, I'd like to invite Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII, to give his opening remarks. Mr. Banerjee, please.
Governor Huntsman, Ambassador Verma, General Sawhney, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and sorry for this delayed start. We were expecting the Minister to actually join us from the start, but he is clearing something which he says is very important, and therefore we'll start off without his presence. We had a wonderful day actually today in terms of the conference which has been spearheaded by the Vivekananda Institute and Atlantic Council, and it's really a pleasure for the industry to be a part of this very significant exercise, and it has been a delight for industry to actually partner and in the conference today. I must say that our relationship with the Atlantic Council goes back many, many years, and we have been working with Governor for the last many years, and great to have a very strong team from the Atlantic Council once again to be here in India. We're also very pleased to work with the Vivekananda International Foundation and delighted that we had the opportunity when General Sawhney and the director asked CII to collaborate in this. We must also say that working with the U.S. in several spheres that we have done over the last few decades have been very, very interesting. And as we welcomed Ambassador Verma here, we really saw that he really hit the ground running, so to say, and it was great to have him over here. One has been associated with him in various ways before his arrival here, connected to him on several forums, including the strategy dialogues where we've been involved. And so you are really here, Excellency, at a very, very exciting time, and nothing more exciting could have been there than the present times. And we see a phenomenal opportunity that is today evolving out in India. And as we really traverse the globe, we see the positive attitude, not only the positive attitude, but people do say that things are happening, and the last few months have been really exciting to be operational in India. Today in the conference, we covered some very critical areas and such topics such as the emerging regional security order in Asia and the security situation in AFPAC. But tomorrow there are several other interesting sessions as we focus more on the trade, the Middle East strategy, securing the global commons, and we will really look forward to those discussions as we go along. Just about a year back, there was quite a lot of bearish sentiment, if one can say, and to really bring back this sorry for the pause, and welcome, Honorable Minister. So very warm welcome to you, Honorable Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, for being here this evening. And I must say that it's been, again, great fun working with him, and much has been really happening in this huge sector that he belongs to. He is just, and if one really knows that he is the Minister for Power, Coal, Renewable Energy, New and Renewable Energy. And And I must say that the way he has really taken on this huge task that he's responsible for, where we are seeing some of the most important actions on the ground. And a major achievement, if I can say, has been the long pending issue of coal mine auctions, which I now understand has netted over 2 trillion rupees over the last few months. And only last month we had partnered the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy on on a conference on renewable energy, where the industry committed to set up more than 225,000 megawatts of renewable energy projects. And we saw the way he handled some of these over here in India, and also very recently when we were all together in Davos. Your presence here, sir, is extremely significant, as we see that our opportunity area with the US in this entire space of energy to be very, very important and critical, especially in the area of clean energy. And we are really looking forward to hearing you on this very important sector. In fact, today we have covered a lot of ground, as I was talking just before you arrived. And when we started off with the Foreign Secretary, I think we had talked about various issues. And one of the most important things that is really happening today in India that has been much talked about is this. And we have been working in close partnership with the government is in the area of making in India, and for that really focusing on how we can make doing business in India easier. And as we see us working within the country, one of the focus areas which is very relevant, if I would say, for the United States would be, as we look at in India, it's actually 29 different countries, one could say, in the different states of India. And we see the type of empowerment that we see now in the states, and lot really happening in the states. So when we really talk about making in India, we are talking about the ease of doing business. It's just not the central government. One looks the way the central government and the state government connectivity is really helping industry to focus on the entire area of ease of doing business. In fact, we're also now pushing on some of these frontiers very, very aggressively. Some of the areas, again, that we would also like to focus on over the next 24 hours are areas on defense co-production and development, high technology manufacturing, smart cities, clean energy, all the cutting edge areas that's really are being balanced with the developmental needs of India, such as sanitation, education, amongst others. So as we stand here today, we do really look forward to a great relationship on the way ahead. And thank you for really participating in this dinner evening. We have an interesting evening ahead, and once again would like to welcome each one of you for this very interesting session as we look ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee. May I now invite Mr. John Huntsman, Jr., Chairman, Atlantic Council, to give his remarks, please.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here representing the Atlantic Council family, Mr. Banerjee, Minister Goyal, our great ambassador, Verma, who I'm personally enormously grateful for because he's responsible for having gotten me through Senate confirmation. And then he himself went through Senate confirmation and broke the record in the United States by doing so, Richard, either in 7 days or 7 minutes. I can't remember which it was. Maybe 7 minutes is more accurate. I'm going to be mercifully brief because we have some important people to hear from. It's been said that Indians remember everything, Americans remember nothing. So I'm going to say I was so heartened in the work of the Atlantic Council with the co-sponsorship of the Confederation of Indian Industry, a wonderful organization, the Vivekananda International Foundation, the U.S. Embassy, because what I heard today was unlike anything I've heard coming back and forth for almost 30 years. There was a real dialogue based on honesty and trust. And not to put too much pressure on everybody here in this room, but I don't think the bilateral relationship has seen the kind of important crossroads that we face today. I don't mean that to be hyperbole of any kind. I think it's just a fact. We have an opening in terms of world history. We have leadership in India. We have issues that drive us both in common directions. So we rise to the occasion or we miss it. And if we miss it, I'm not sure we're going to want to be around to talk about it in the future. So we're focused on that which can be done. The Atlantic Council is grateful for those who have been part of co-convening this conference with us. We are here to build capacity and to build friendships. We know that's how relationships work, and that's how organizations become trusted and established. So thank you one and all for making today and tomorrow such a special time for the Atlantic Council. To Fred Kempe, who is a terrific leader of the Atlantic Council, to Bharath Gopalaswamy, who has been such a critically important organizer. We're grateful to one and all. So thank you to the U.S. Embassy, Richard. Thank you to the Vivekananda Foundation, the Confederation of Indian Industry, and to my Atlantic Council friends. And now it's my great honor to bring up General R.K. Sawhney. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Excellency Minister Piyush Goyal, U.S. Ambassador Richard Verma, Mr. Frederick, the President and CEO of the Atlantic Council, Governor Huntsman, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity on behalf of VIF to thank Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee and the CII for hosting us this evening. Before I proceed further, I must compliment all four partners of this conference, the Vivekananda International Foundation, the Atlantic Council, CII, and the U.S. Embassy for delivering the agenda for this deliberation and to bring an excellent team of speakers to add value to the dialogue between our two countries. We hope that we can build upon this meeting and move forward together from here to engage in specific policy-related dialogue in the future as well. The subject of the conference, India U.S. 2015 Partnering for Peace and Prosperity itself is so very positive, appropriate, and in consonance with the way our relationship is headed in a higher trajectory. I deeply appreciate that I've got this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. We have had a very fruitful and spirited round of discussion at the Vivekananda International Foundation today. The two main themes discussed were the security situation and the challenges in the East Asia and emerging situation in Afghanistan. Both are areas of concern not only for India and the US, but in a globalized world, what happens here impacts people the world over. The Modi-Obama joint statement of January 2015 recognizing a confluence of interests between India and the United States and finds a commonality in their respective strategic initiatives towards East Asia. The statement noted the alignment of, I quote, India's Act East policy and United States resilience rebalance in Asia, unquote, and the potential, quote, opportunities for India, the United States, and other Pacific countries to work closely to strengthen regional ties, unquote, as a result. So this has emerged as a very positive area of collaboration between India and the US. India too needs to project itself as a lead player rather than just a balancer. The Asia-Pacific region is also the most rapidly growing and dynamic region in the world. The region is home to more than half the global economy and 61% of the total world population. The US has more than 34% of the trade in this region and also now India's biggest trading partner, with the potential for trade to grow threefold in the next 5 years. The rise of China and its military power is the most noteworthy factor of the last 2-3 decades. China is assertively enhancing its strategic influence in the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. While this is a matter of great concern to all of us, we need to evolve strategic partnership with other countries in the region, not with a view to contain China, but to manage its rise in a positive manner. We would like China to be a part of mainstream of countries in the effort towards economic growth of the populace And for this, there is a need to evolve an ongoing dialogue to engage China. But India cannot look east without addressing serious concerns in its immediate neighborhood. And here the present government has been reaching out to SAARC countries in the vicinity of India, as also the extended neighborhood, to safeguard its interest in the Indian Ocean through a definite policy of strengthening the maritime dimensions of our engagement with the neighbors. Afghanistan and its FPAC policy, therefore, deserves our continued support for some time to come. Tomorrow's discussions will focus on emerging situation in West Asia, securing global commons, and a session on US-India trade relation and how to maximize the importance of economics as an important stakeholder in the security partnership. These are all important issues, and we hope to find ways to maximize the economic potential of the US-India partnership through dialogue. We look forward to some very interesting discussion in these themes tomorrow. So I will not dwell more on the subject for now. I will now request Ambassador Richard Verma to say a few words.
General, thank you very much for the introduction. Let me thank the Atlantic Council, Vivekananda, CII, all of the friends that I see out here. There's a lot of them from Washington that have traveled. If I start to name them, I will certainly miss somebody. But it's really great to see so many of you that came out. And Governor Huntsman in particular, it's great to see you. I got to know Governor Huntsman when I was the Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs, and he was nominated by the President to be our ambassador to China, and I was told to make sure that he got to China, and he got to China quickly. And everything was moving along well, and we came to a Thursday when the Senate was going to break for a fairly long break, and his nomination was supposed to go through, and it was supposed to go through very smoothly. And I got a call from a senator, and I don't know if you'll even remember this story. It's still etched in my brain. I got a call from the senator saying, I'm sorry to tell you that because of some other problems we're having, Governor Huntsman's nomination will not go through the Senate today, and we'll deal with it in a few weeks. And so there I was, wondering what I should do, having been given this direct order to get the governor's nomination through. And we had a long discussion in my office. Who was actually going to call Governor Huntsman to tell him that his nomination was not going to go through? And I was that lucky person. I remember calling Governor Huntsman, and I said, Governor, just wanted to tell you, you know, the nomination is not going to be confirmed by the Senate today, and here's why. And he listened very politely, and there was silence at the other end of the phone, and he came back with a voice that sounded a lot like Clint Eastwood from, you know, that "Make My Day" kind of line. And he said, Richard, you're a nice young man. He said, but that's not going to work for me. I'm actually moving out of the governor's mansion. We're having a going away party. There's a new governor moving in, and we're planning to go to China. So why don't you get back to the Senate and let them know. Thanks for calling. And so that was, then I had to communicate that message back, and lo and behold, the Senate did the right thing, and we had a great ambassador in China. And again, it was one of my parting memories of Ambassador Huntsman. But it really is, it's great to be here with so many of you tonight. A couple people have asked me if I had been around India, and I gave a speech last week in Calcutta and said that I had done 9 trips in 9 weeks. And this is actually my night off, and I'm here with all of you at this good event. But it did give me a sense of how much excitement there is about the relationship, how much promise there is, and really you feel the energy across India, from north to south, east to west. You just feel a change in what's happening. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that tonight and what we're thinking about from the embassy's position. You know, India society has a long and rich history of thinking deeply about global affairs. And as I said, all I have to do is look around this room, but really all I have to do is look out of my window at the embassy. As many of you know, the U.S. Embassy is located in Chanakapuri neighborhood of Delhi, which translates as City of Chanaka. But don't test me on my Hindi any farther than that, because Chanakya was a renowned strategist and minister during the great Maurya dynasty that ruled most of India almost 2,000 years ago. But many of his observations are still relevant today. For example, Chanakya said that the welfare of a state depends on an active foreign policy. He also said that the definition of a true friend in international relations is someone who shares a common objective and is helpful. Now, more than ever, the United States are recognizing that we share not only democratic values, but that we also share common objectives that will be best realized becoming the true friends Chanakya wrote about. Indeed, as President Obama said, the United States doesn't want to just be India's partner. We want to be India's best partner. President Obama and Prime Minister Modi also made clear their priorities for the relationship in the Declaration of Friendship they articulated during the President's recent Republic Day visit. And in this declaration, our leaders agreed to elevate our long-standing strategic partnership. We now have what I would call strategic plus, a strategic plus relationship with India. So what does strategic plus actually mean? The United States and India relationship is not merely defined by a limited number of converging interests. We now share a common vision, a vision of a more peaceful, prosperous, and stable world. How we work to achieve this common vision is what defines our strategic plus partnership. Indeed, we have upgraded our relationship, as the Prime Minister and President have said. And tonight, I just want to highlight 3 examples of our strategic plus partnership: regional cooperation, space science cooperation, and defense cooperation. We are not working together on these issues in an ad hoc manner, one based on short-term aligning interests. Rather, we are cooperating in a long-term, comprehensive way, one that underscores our new partnership. First, regional stability. The United States and India both recognize that regional integration is essential to security and prosperity. For the United States, our relationship with Mexico and Canada was strengthened by NAFTA, and that's one example. And for India, I would note the long-standing neighbors first policy and the increased emphasis on engagement in SAARC, including the Foreign Secretary Jaishankar's SAARC Yatra, and of course the Prime Minister's recent travels this week in the Indian Ocean. But as our friend Chanakya said, a true friend also tries to be helpful. In this vein, we are not here simply to applaud the Indian government's forward-leaning approach toward its neighbors. We're here to help. Whether it's by together promoting a stable Afghanistan, together encouraging regional economic integration, or together bolstering good governance. While the U.S. combat mission in Afghanistan is over, we will continue to be strong and reliable partners for the Afghan people who have benefited from India's and our own generous assistance over many years. Acting under Resolute Support Mission, U.S. forces in Afghanistan will have 2 primary missions in the coming years: working with NATO counterparts to train, advise, and assist Afghan national security forces, and maintaining a counterterrorism capability. We recognize India as a key partner in Afghanistan's future, and cooperation and consultation between the United States and India and Afghanistan will continue to be close. And in that respect, we continue to have high-level discussions with India on the future of Afghanistan. In their joint statement, President Obama and Prime Minister Modi underscored the importance of enhancing connectivity and enabling a freer flow of commerce in the region. We strongly support efforts by India and SAARC to continue its pursuit of a South Asian Free Trade Area, SAFTA. A fully implemented SAFTA would represent one of SAARC's most significant achievements. The recent deal brokered between the United States and India to ensure implementation of the Bali Accord has also paved way for a trade facilitation agreement, which can bring tremendous benefits to the region by helping to harmonize customs regulations and procedures and reduce costs for small businesses to access regional and global markets. But the United States and India also recognize that economic connectivity by itself is not enough to create enduring peace and prosperity for the region. So we will work together with India in the region to strengthen transparent and accountable governance. We welcome India's efforts to promote decentralization and reconciliation in Sri Lanka and support continuing efforts to encourage stable, democratic governance in Bangladesh and Nepal. Moreover, I note both our countries' respect for the rule of law as a standard for resolving international conflicts. In this regard, India recently demonstrated great leadership in promoting regional norms by respecting the July 2014 ruling under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea that delimited the maritime boundary in the Bay of Bengal in Bangladesh's favor. The President and Prime Minister also recognized that India and the United States, their shared interest in promoting peace, stability, and security in the wider Indo-Pacific neighborhood as well. And they memorialized that vision in a joint statement on the Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean that called for our two nations to work with like-minded partners in the region on a number of shared goals. These include supporting regional economic integration, promoting accelerated infrastructure connectivity, and supporting a rules-based order throughout the Indo-Pacific region. Thus, while for years India's Act East policy and our rebalance to Asia were simply shared objectives, they are now part of a shared vision and one that defines our Strategic Plus partnership. Second, space science cooperation. The United States and India don't just see global issues through the same strategic lens, we see the universe through the same strategic lens. The United States and India have long had a successful history of space cooperation, demonstrated best by the successful Mars orbiter mission carried out last fall. And bear with me as I try my hand at some Hindi linguistics, but it's too meaningful to ignore. So Mangal means Mars in Hindi, but is also used to describe something auspicious. And auspicious would be a good way to describe the cooperation between India and the United States on space science. We've been working together on space science since 1963, when the first sounding rocket, a Nike Apache, carrying instruments for conducting ionospheric experiments over the Earth's equator, was launched from Kerala. And the cooperation continues to this day. Thus, we are applying the Strategic Plus principle to this area as well. And last September, NASA and the India Space Research Organization signed an implementing agreement to conduct a joint synthetic aperture radar mission in 2021. The mission's two radars will use advanced imaging technology to provide a detailed view of the Earth by taking measurements of some of the planet's most complex processes, which will improve our understanding of the impacts of climate change and advance our knowledge of natural hazards. We're also working together on space navigation, communication, and weather monitoring systems. And the first session of the U.S.-India Mars Working Group was held in Bangalore this January, and both our countries just convened the first space security dialogue last week. These are just a few of the ways our science-based space cooperation will increase scientific knowledge, promote global interconnectivity, and bolster international security. And third and finally, just a word on defense cooperation. So back here on Earth, during Aero India, I had the unique opportunity of observing members of U.S. and Indian Special Forces complete a combined free-fall jump from a C-17 airplane as part of a joint parachuting demonstration. As I've said before, perhaps the truest test of a friendship between countries is the degree to which their armed forces trust and collaborate with each other. And as a former Air Force officer, I can tell you that if we can trust each other while rapidly free-falling towards the ground, our relationship is moving in the right direction. But this parachuting demonstration was just one very impressive display of what our robust defense relationship has become and where it can lead. No example better illustrates the new course of our collaborative relationship than the decision by U.S. and Indian defense establishments and private sectors to pursue co-development and co-production of defense articles, the Defense Technology and Trade Initiative, or DTTI. DTTI aims to strengthen capabilities that are needed for the sustainment and modernization of our military forces and the growth of our economy. As many of you know, there are 4 Pathfinder projects plus working groups on aircraft carrier cooperation and the exploration of jet engine technology. We also collaborate each other through joint exercises such as our Malabar naval exercises, officer exchange programs, and training programs. This is the type of defense collaboration the United States has with its closest partners. And Ash Carter, our new Secretary of Defense, was a driving force behind DTTI. And we all look forward to working with him as we continue to build a military relationship that can help both sides promote and protect our shared democratic values. So in closing, let me circle back to Chanakya. And in Chanakya's treatise on statecraft, he asks, which is preferable, an immediate small gain or a large gain in the future? Chanakya asserts that a large gain in the future is preferable if it is like a seed yielding fruit in the future. This is how we must view our Strategic Plus partnership. If our strategic visions are aligned, and if we are patient and reliable partners, if we continue to engage in the hard work our leaders envision, there will indeed be large gains in the future, not just for India and the United States, but for global peace, security, and prosperity. Thank you very much. Look forward to your questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor and pleasure to invite Mr. Piyush Goyal, Honorable Minister of State, Independent Charge for Power, Coal and New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Mr. Minister, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Governor John Huntsman, Ambassador Richard Verma, whom I think I grew a little bit close to during President Obama's visit when we interacted quite deeply, Mr. Frederick Kempe, Mr. Lieutenant General R.K. Sawhney, my good friend Chandrajit Banerjee. I see a lot of distinguished delegates from both India and the United States, members of the Atlantic Council, the United States State Department, my good friend Hero Mustafa over there. Ladies and gentlemen, after listening to Ambassador Verma, I'm feeling a little threatened. If he's going to be such a good speaker, I hope America hasn't sent him to India first to be ambassador and then to run for government in India. And Governor, I think Ambassador has already proved you half wrong. You mentioned about the short memory the Americans have and the long memory the Indians have. But I think he has shown, and I do believe as a representative of America, he comes here as an American, he has amply demonstrated he has all the fine details of all those old instances with you. So we'll have to be careful. We can't take the American memory for being very short anymore. But truly, I'm delighted that both sides are looking at this kind of a deep engagement, looking at a relationship that encompasses a variety of horizons. It's not only about what happens between India and the U.S., it's what happens in the world, it's what happens in the region, it's what happens with mankind, it's what happens with climate change. And it's only when the dialogue is all-encompassing and considers various aspects of humanity, the various dimensions that affect all our lives, is when a partnership can be truly successful, long-lasting, and result-oriented. And I do wish this engagement that the Atlantic Council, the CII, and the United States State Department have jointly put together will help both sides understand each other better, understand the concerns of both sides, find solutions to address what I'm sure might be happening on both sides, which could be considered ticklish, considered impediments to a deeper relationship. And if, as we saw during the visit of President Obama, if we can work as equal partners, if we can talk on terms of reciprocity, then the sky's the limit. I think India and the United States can take this partnership to a completely different plane, to a completely new level. And I'm very confident, given the bond that was established between President Obama and Prime Minister Modi, particularly in both the interactions in September in the United States and in January in New Delhi, I'm fairly confident that we are seeing in the years ahead a very, very strong Indo-US partnership, a partnership that will transcend economic interests, a partnership that will lead the world in a manner of speaking when we talk of peace, stability, a cleaner planet, a better world to live in, not only for us but for future generations, a socially inclusive agenda where we understand the social compulsions and requirements of each other. When we are talking of H-1B visas, we understand the American perspective on that. But when we are talking of development in India, the American side understands our development imperatives. And if both sides can talk, and think tanks such as yours can help us engage in a more frank manner and in a more fruitful manner, I'm sure we can take this entire relationship to benefit the people of both countries. I do understand that clean energy, obviously renewable energy being my subject, is something which I'm now quite passionate about, was an integral part of the Indo-US dialogue. And I do believe that the challenging tasks and the challenging targets that India has set upon itself to achieve, we have almost increased our renewable energy targets fivefold, from a solar mission which talked of 20 gigawatts by 2022. We are now looking at a 100 gigawatt mission by 2022. And personally, I would be delighted if I could do it by 2020, not even by 2022. Similarly, on wind, on getting back our stranded gas plants into operation, on a variety of clean energies, India has focused its attention. The United States has recognized that focus, and we are looking at a much deeper understanding and a much deeper relationship, particularly as I have requested the Honorable President, Secretary of State, Commerce Secretary, and other officials, the Energy Secretary. My requests have always centered around innovative financing models, support from the US side when we are trying to scale up renewable energy to such high levels. And I do hope that going forward, we can actually take this dialogue on a fast-track basis and see how both sides can engage much more on the renewable energy side. Of course, on our side, we have not imposed the anti-dumping duty which was impending when we took office on 4 countries, including the United States of America, on import of solar equipment. And I have been waiting to hear some reciprocal good news also from the American side. But I do hope all of these small stepping stones can be taken further forward, and we can look at expanding this relationship with the support of think tanks like the Atlantic Council, many others who are deeply passionate about taking the Indo-US dialogue on a fast-track basis. My Prime Minister has often articulated that a clean planet, the recognition of the challenges of climate change, the environmental concerns, for him are an article of faith. I think he even articulated it when President Obama and he were addressing the press together. It is not any pressure of the world. It is not any pressure of what happened in Lima or what may happen in Paris. For him personally and for this government, going towards a cleaner environment, ensuring that we take our renewable energy program on a fast-track basis is an article of faith for Prime Minister Modi. And going forward, I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that the targets we have set upon ourselves are real, are doable, are going to work, and we stand committed to make that happen. The engagement that this two-day conference is furthering goes beyond the economic engagement. You are looking at a much faster relationship building on the political front, both regional and the world politics. You're looking at the social dimension of this relationship. And I'm sure at the end of 2 days, we can all hope to receive some concrete suggestions. What can be done, whether it's in the field of education, whether it's in the field of technology, innovation, whether it's in the field of skill development, which for the Indian government today is a very, very paramount project, how to make our people employable, how to enhance the skills of our people, to make them worthy citizens who can live a life, a self-reliant life of their own. And in all of these projects, I believe the United States and India can work together, can work as partners, as Ambassador Verma recounted. We can work as best partners, is what President Obama had left behind when while he was in India. And I do hope this two-day conference will further this best partnership model that we are trying to build up. I recall that in Davos this time around, India clearly was the flavor of the season. The entire Davos story was centered around the American economy and the Indian economy. Two of the most important economies of the world. In fact, we have the IMF chief at dinner with the Honorable Finance Ministers upstairs in the same hotel. And she has only today articulated her belief that India is bucking the trend when we look at the world growth and can actually become the engine for global growth going forward. And in that sense, I think the dinner today can be a toast to this strong partnership between the world's largest economy and maybe the world's fastest growing large economy. I wish your deliberations all success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goyal. And ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the second part of the session, which promises to be as interesting. And for that, may I request Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Mr. John Huntsman, and Lieutenant General R.K. Sawhney to please take their seats on the round table in front. I request Mr. Piyush Goyal, His Excellency Mr. Richard Verma, and Mr. Frederick Kempe to stay on the dais. May I request Mr. Kempe to, yes, please move onto the chair there and take the session forward. He will moderate this discussion. I hand over the mic to him.
Thank you. I know this is late and you're all a little bit hungry, so we're going to try to keep this to 15 minutes, 20 minutes maximum, just for a little bit of Q&A. First of all, for those of you who don't know already, I'm Fred Kempe, President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. I want to thank the Vivekananda International Foundation, the Confederation of Indian Industry, and the U.S. Embassy. Ambassador Verma, you and your staff have been absolutely fantastic. Really thank you for that. I want to use a quote for my question from Ambassador Huntsman, where he said, "We rise to the occasion or we miss it." We at the Atlantic Council are a results-oriented organization. We're community builders, and you're all part of this community. You've seen the challenge that Ambassador Huntsman had set out for us. Ambassador Verma, when you say strategic plus, we want to be part of the strategic and part of the plus. Just to illustrate that, we have been working at the Atlantic Council on Indo-U.S. space cooperation. Our Deputy Director, Bharat Gopalswamy, is a PhD in aerospace engineering. And we have a project exploring this cooperation funded by Smith Richardson Foundation, working with the Indian Space Research Organization. So we're there already. We have an global energy center where we want to work with you on these issues. Here's a question for both of you. This a little bit for the work of the Atlantic Council, but also for the results orientation of this relationship. 12 months out, pick something concrete. How will you measure the success of this relationship, and be as concrete as you can? Both of you, perhaps Mr. Ambassador, you can go first, because we can be high on rhetorics about this relationship and very enthusiastic about where we're going, but how do we measure our results 12 months? If we come back here, and I think I've talked to the Foundation, VIF, and we are talking about doing something like this again next year, let's come back and measure the results of this relationship.
So just on very specifically, and I won't pick one project because that's too hard, or one program, but in defense, we need to sign our 10-year defense framework agreement, which had been agreed to, setting forth the kind of architecture for our two militaries for the next 10 years. We need to do more in defense co-production and development under DTTI. Our two militaries need to train and operate together. I could go on through defense. In economics and trade, we need to start working towards the $500 billion target that the president set in two-way trade. That means restarting our BIT negotiations. That means having our strategic and commercial dialogue for the first time, bringing all of our engines of the U.S. government to bear in the commercial sector as well. Clean energy, I'm going to defer to the minister, but this is really a terrific pathway forward in civil nuclear cooperation, in wind, in solar, and being a partner. In development, health, science, space, I can tell you from my perspective, we are going to be measuring all the results in all of the sectors, because we want to show results as well. We want to go from rhetoric and into delivery. And the team here is as good as they come. We're very excited about the year ahead, but we have work to do, and we're going to get at it, and we've been getting at it.
Well, I'm focused on my renewable energy. I have a $250 billion program for the next 5 years in the power sector as a whole. If the United States can fund maybe $5 billion of FDI and $20 billion of long-term debt, public, private, some government initiatives, some private equity funds, hedge funds, whatever, I'm open to all sorts of green bucks. At $25 billion, 1 year down the road, I would think relationship is concrete, and America is putting its money where its mouth is.
I see representatives of the Department of Energy here in the audience, so we're taking this down and seeing what we can do together. But in any case, and we also have a Global Energy and Economic Summit in Istanbul, where Secretary Moniz may be in attendance on November 20th, 21st. Come along, join us, and we'll see where we are. Let me turn to the audience. I think we have time for a couple of questions. Who can I grab from the audience who would like to ask a question of either the ambassador or the minister? Well, I'm going to ask my own if I don't get something here. Yes, please. Yes? If you can identify yourself and to whom you'd like to identify your question.
Good evening, Smita Sharma from Headlines Today. Just a question for the Ambassador, in fact, picking up from your question. Because the mood in a lot of the industrialists and top corporate names here have come out and said that despite a lot of promises made by the current Modi government, business on the ground has not seen much easing. Is that something that you feel that has changed as far as the business process in India is concerned?
Look, I think this this is a work in progress, and we're working as partners with the government on this. And as issues arise, we deal with them. People have heard me tell the story of, it takes 80 permits to start a hotel in India compared to 6 in Singapore. Look, our businesses, our companies, I think like Indian companies, want a level playing field, transparent decision making, a rules-based system, legal certainty, tax certainty. Those are all issues that I think apply equally well to whether they're Indian companies or American companies. I will say that as I've traveled around the country, you also see an enormous competition between the states that are working very hard to attract outside investment, setting up a single window for approvals, increasing the ease of which land and tax issues are dealt with. So I think all of that is moving in the right direction. I think that's a positive sign.
I'd just like to add, I think this is something which we hear more in the media than we hear on the ground. I'm just wondering to myself that in terms of actual ease of business, there's so much that has happened, be it the stressed power situation in the country, which has completely eased. We now have a situation where coal production is up 7%, which has never happened in India before, and therefore power plants are suddenly getting much more coal, sorted out a lot of their problems. We have power production up by 11%, which has never happened in the country before, sorted out problems of industry and homes who used to have a lot of outages, and therefore the entire demand is now being met. I'm frankly very concerned that with this rate of growth, I may soon have surplus coal and surplus power. I don't know what to do with it. The finance minister is on record that we'll have a stable tax regime, and he's stuck to it through the second budget. We are looking at a new law which will ease setting up of business so that all the 16 permits come under one regulation, and a person can actually start his business sitting on his computer at home, pay the requisite fees and get a license based on self-certification with strong penalties if somebody misrepresents his case. So I believe that on the ground, the coal auctions, all the uncertainty, all the fear, what happens if government licenses, government contracts are cancelled, is a thing of the past. Investors can today invest in India with certainty of a predictable tax regime, stable tax regime, the regulatory framework getting more and more transparent, auction becoming the method of giving out all natural resources. So you don't have to worry that after 10 years, 5 years, your decisions will be questioned. You have a stronger advanced ruling mechanism. So if you have a problem about a tax structure, go to the authorities, you'll get a ruling which will be binding about what the tax treatment will be. Now if some people who are so used to crony capitalism and who are so used to messing around with the system and getting everything or subverting systems to their benefit are suddenly finding that this government doesn't yield or doesn't give an opportunity for that kind of capitalist streak. For them, the message is loud and clear. India is not open to business for that kind of capitalism. But on a transparent, honest and equal footing, India is the place to do business in, and this government means business on that.
Mr. Minister, that was a really passionate and very clear message. Drill down a little bit on this earlier number you gave, $250 billion in the power sector. Talked about a desire for $5 billion FDI from the U.S., $20 billion in long-term debt. That's still a small percentage of that number. How much of that number is going to come from foreign investment, and how do you choose your partners in this?
Well, it's an open, free world. We as government don't choose any partners. It's for the private partners to choose their partners in India, or the Americans to choose whom they trust to want to invest in. Government can only ensure that our regulatory framework will be transparent, our processes will be simplified. For example, I've often spoken on many occasions that whenever a case comes to us now, instead of sorting out the individual case, we are looking at a root cause analysis. We are looking at seeing what is it in the policy that caused the distress in the first place and setting that right so that other people down the line in the future or other past cases can simultaneously get sorted out. In terms of a mix between foreign capital and Indian, I don't need to set any limitations one way or the other. I believe the capital will come where the opportunity is attractive. And we are trying to create an innovative models, particularly in renewable energy, where we'll ensure two things. A bankable power purchase agreement so that the counterparty risk is mitigated. B, a stable regime, a long-term regime. And three, we are looking at some innovative models which will attract the foreign capital, and then it will be their choice. If they find that business is good in India, they can make money in the long run, they'll come. If they don't come, we are also simultaneously looking at increasing the savings rate within India, and I'm sure that itself will also support our growth in these various sectors significantly.
Excellent answer. I see one more question, please. Let's pick up these last two questions, and then we'll come back to the two of you for a final round.
I'm Dinakar Perry with the Hindu newspaper. Question for the ambassador again. You talk about nuclear cooperation. So, on the nuclear, can you talk about when the administrative arrangements are supposed to be signed? Any timeline for that? And can you clarify on the tracking clause in the same line if you can? On the tracking clause, that was supposed to be the contentious part of the thing.
Did you pick that?
Yeah, no, I
and
got it.
let me pick up the last question too before we go to this final round. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a question for Ambassador Verma. Clearly in the Strategic Plus agreement, the economic partnership would form a critical part of the whole thing. So in this economic partnership, what do you see as the 4 or 5 sectors which would really form the core of this whole partnership between our two countries?
And I'll expand this to the energy part, which in the energy sector, what technologies or what partnership is most interesting to you beyond the financial side that you talked about?
Sure. Okay.
So just on the economic question, I would say, look, we're tracking where India is growing and where India wants to go. So infrastructure is a huge area of interest. Clean energy is a huge area of interest. Defense cooperation, Make in India, Digital India, Clean India, all these overlap exceptionally nicely with where our companies want to go, where our technologies are. We have experience in these areas as well. And I think, look, these are critical to the country, but they're also critical to the people. And I think we have a lot to offer, whether it's in smart cities development, whether it's in, again, in infrastructure, technology, high tech. I think it's actually unlimited. And so I'd hate to limit it to one sector because I would leave off education, or I'd leave off healthcare, or I'd leave off one of the key areas. I really think, and again, I would say the people-to-people relationships and the business-to-business relationships are strong. They've been way out in front for many years, and so it is a great engine which pulls our two countries together, the commercial side. On the nuclear issues, I would say, look, we had 2 sticking points. That was on the tracking of materials and on liability. And I would just back up maybe not to the President's visit in January, but to the Prime Minister's visit in September. And the commitment of 2 heads of state to come together to solve an issue that had been simmering for too long and had been an obstacle to our cooperation. And I think we have to step back as to why this was so important. This was about helping to deliver in a non-carbon intensive way electricity to the 300 or 400 million people that don't have regular access to electricity. And so it was in India's interest, it was in our interest to have a breakthrough, and that's exactly what happened over a period of 3 or 4 months with our experts meeting with the government of India's experts over a concerted time, 3 different cities. They came to an understanding, and they came to it, there's plenty of material out there on both of these subjects, and I would just say through our consultations, we feel very comfortable that we will meet the requirements in our law on the tracking of the material, and we feel that a good understanding was reached on liability. Now, you've also seen what I've said about that it's not the U.S. government that's going to perform the contracts ultimately. It'll be the U.S. companies. And what we'll have to assess as we move through this year and through next year is whether the assurances that were given, whether the ratification of the treaty, whether the combination of case law and administrative understandings that were reached is sufficient for the companies to enter the market. We're going to keep working at this. This is not over by any means. We're going to keep working at it at all levels.
Mr. Minister, you have the final word.
Just to supplement, I think at least in the energy space, we have huge amount of potential of partnerships. America has been doing coal mining for 150, 200 years. We'd love to know if we can do our coal mining better, particularly the underground mining. In terms of power generation through thermal power, if we can have more efficiency in our coal plants, or we can reduce the emissions from the thermal plants, that could be another area where technology could come into India. In terms of renewables, of course, whether we can have better plant load factors for solar, whether we can have solar wind combos, whether we can repower our existing wind capacity with larger windmills. I don't know, maybe America may not be the best place for the wind part of it, but certainly in solar there's been quite a bit of development in the US. Transmission is one area where we are looking for more cost-effective solutions, because India needs to upgrade its transmission corridors and the entire transmission grid very significantly. I see at least a $50 billion opportunity in transmission. And we've opened it up for the private sector. So we can have American companies come and own private transmission lines here. We can have American companies bid for the UMPPs, 5 of which we are working on together. But the good part is the dialogue is moving forward actively. It's not a stalled dialogue. It's not a dialogue with both sides having an ostrich-like approach without trying to find final solutions. It's a dialogue which is moving towards resolution. And I think that's a great breakthrough. So in terms of technology efficiency, I mean, I remember one of the interactions we had with the Deputy Secretary of Energy involved the HFC problem. America is seized of the impending implosion or explosion of HFC, the fluorocarbons, which can act in the air conditioning, which probably going forward 10, 20 years down the road is going to be the world's biggest challenge. But we still have to get technology which is cost effective, particularly in a country like India, where elections can be won and lost on 80 paisa or 1 rupee of cheaper power. Certainly you can't expect people to start investing in air conditioners which are 5 or 8 times the cost. But with technological innovations, if we can bring that into a cost-effective mode, like the LEDs are today. The LED lights, which were selling at 400 and 500 rupees, ever since I became minister and we scaled up our efficiency program on LEDs, I'm delighted to inform all of you, it was being purchased at some pretty large number when I became minister. So I called all the manufacturers and had a dialogue and said, look, my target is a double-digit figure. And 6 months down the road, somewhere about 2 months back, or 1.5 months back, we got a 102 rupee per bulb, a 4-watt bulb quote, which is about 1/5 the market price. And the last tender we opened about 4 or 5 days ago was 80 rupees, 80 or 82 rupees. And now my target is $1. So we would have brought it down by nearly 70% in 9 months. By doing it honestly, by doing it through a transparent process, by bringing in economies of scale, and by having a dialogue where both sides understand each other. So earlier we were paying in 5 years. Now we are paying upfront and taking a performance guarantee instead. That itself reduced the price by about $0.50. Just a small intervention which was a no-brainer. So the idea is that we would like to learn from America in terms of technology, innovation, innovative financing, what benefits we can get with economies of scale, what new technologies can make our environmental consciousness better, how can we bring energy efficiency into our manufacturing sector, into our turbines, boilers, machineries. So we have an open mind, and we recognize America's ability to provide much, much more modern technology than what we are using, and we are happy to invite that to India. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Minister, you've given us a terrific conversation, discussion, and also some very concrete goals. And so we're going to help implement this where we can, and we really thank you for the time. Shall I pass back to you to give us the instructions for the rest of the evening? And let's give a round of applause for our speakers.